Not everyone has the money to be constantly buying new photography gear, and a lot of people don't even have the time to go out and shoot all the time. So we want to share a few things that we've learned that have made us better photographers.
This is the Picture This Photography podcast for Tony and Chelsea Northrup, and we're trying out something different. If we sound a little different, it's because we're in a different room. I think we're just bored and we wanted to be someplace else.
Yeah, we're a little bit bored. Tony, I know you have some really good tips on ways to improve your photos, and I have like what I feel like is a great secret and something that everyone needs to learn, because it's not only improved my photography, it's not only improved our business, but it helped me make dollars once.
First, a word from our sponsor, Squarespace. No matter what type of website you need, a website for your restaurant, your business, or your photography portfolio, Squarespace is the best way to set it up. You can literally just drag and drop pictures in there, type some text about yourself, and it looks gorgeous. Head to squarespace.com/Chelsea. Try it out for 14 days free. If you love it, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace.
Speaking of becoming a better photographer, I think having your own website is actually a great way to do that, because you're not just looking at your photos chronologically, you're actually arranging them in a way that you think displays your best pictures in the most attractive way. And when I first made my website, Tony, I realized that I thought I was a good photographer in genres that I was not doing as well in. And I also realized that I really like conceptual portraits, and that wasn't something I had been consciously putting my energy into. So making my website and just seeing my photos made me realize what I wanted to work on more and what I was enjoying more than I realized. So even if you're not going to buy a website, you should just use the 14-day free trial and just see what your photos look like.
So this was actually one of my main points, was to set a goal for yourself, no matter what type of goal that is.
Yeah.
And for me, having a portfolio was actually a big goal, because I set it up and I suddenly felt like it was lacking. And so every time I went out to shoot, it was, how can I get a better picture for my portfolio? And that so often subconsciously drove me to go out a little earlier, stay a little later, try a little bit harder on my post-processing. Other big goals I've had have been to sell a picture at a gallery, which I succeeded in, but it took me several different tries. It took me thinking about what the buyer wanted and talking to different gallery owners. I have wanted to set up a gallery of my own. That's a long-term goal, but that's another thing that drives me to shoot. You recently have been making some art for inside the house, thinking about how you would decorate a specific room in your house. You know, was it a vertical picture, a horizontal picture, a complex picture, a simple picture? Any type of goal that you make for yourself is going to drive you to shoot and will improve your photography in ways that you cannot anticipate.
Yeah, I think it also brings you challenges that you weren't aware that you were having, and solves you to fix them on this journey to a higher purpose. And that's been a big part of our success. Our goal, one of our goals was to just have the #1 photography book. We have a photography book called Stunning Digital Photography. Plug, plug, plug.
People are like, oh, what? I've never heard.
Some people haven't. Some people haven't. But our goal was to get it to be #1, and you hear this analogy like a business person jumps off the cliff and then builds their wings on the way down. And that's exactly what happened. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, but we were constantly learning something new to get us closer to that goal. So if you set a goal with your photography, then you're going to be experiencing all sorts of things you didn't anticipate, but those challenges will make you better. So set a goal.
Okay,
Definitely.
so you brought up a point that studying great photographers has helped you a lot.
Yeah.
And that's something we stumbled into making podcasts. We're we should look into what made Ansel Adams successful. But what have you learned from studying major photographers?
So I think that I first started to realize this when I was taking not only art history classes, but also my college photography classes. We did a lot of studying the history of photos and photographers. And I realized that a lot of the pictures that I thought were great also had amazing stories behind them and had this historical context that made them really important, that gave them this longevity. And so I've studied a lot of photographers. I love Gordon Parks. I love Mary Ellen Mark. You learned about Hines, who took pictures of kids in factories and then actually got child labor laws changed. And so you start to realize that photos don't just have to be about being beautiful, they're about being powerful. They're about having a voice, they're about having a purpose. And when you start to realize that and understand that, it changes the way that you shoot. So you don't really just have to be out taking pictures all of the time to understand how you're going to take your next picture and what thoughts drive those next pictures. And I think that that improves your photos a lot.
I learned a lot also. Some that you brought up the photographer, the documentary photographer Hines, who ended the child labor laws.
Yeah.
Those photos, a lot of them were actually staged. And I was shocked by that. Like he told children to pretend that they were sleeping in the street when they weren't.
Yeah.
But what did that teach me? It taught me one of the reasons I was struggling to create such powerful images was that I wasn't lying about it. Like I was being totally truthful and I wasn't stretching the rules. Ansel Adams also taught me that there were sacrifices I wasn't willing to make. Big part of the reason Ansel Adams was so famous was that he sacrificed his adult life and his relationship with his wife and children.
Yeah.
You know, when his wife was giving birth, he was in the field with a large format camera photographing Yosemite, and his kids hardly knew him.
Yeah.
Those are sacrifices he made to be probably the most famous photographer of all time. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm never going to be a great landscape photographer if that's what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are professional roadblocks or choices that everyone has to come to, because there have definitely been times when we could have made more money or we could have, you know, become more popular or gotten better pictures, and we chose like our kids' soccer game. Or I remember, you know, we've been invited to events and like my dog was sick and I chose to just be with my dog, and I do not regret that. And so you have to choose what's really important to you. Yeah, but you do learn when you study these other people what they had to sacrifice, what it actually entails, if the photos were even true or if they were staged. We've definitely had some heroes ruined and some heroes made by just investigating. But also, it's made me look into newer photographers as well, like the up and coming. So I have the history, but I also like to look at these up and coming younger artists through the same lens. And you see what made history in the past, and so you look at these new people and you see the difference of what's popular now, and it's kind of interesting.
I think, especially, you know, I'm 46 now, looking at these young photographers who are getting famous, so many of my peers look at their work on Instagram and they're like, what's wrong with them? This one defies all the rules that I know. It's not even that sharp. They took it with a smartphone. Screw these guys. Why are they getting famous? I think that's the opposite attitude you need to take. When you see somebody succeeding, even if you personally don't like it, you need to say, what is it that's making them a success? You need to acknowledge to yourself that that's true.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it, it's true. And that can be a painful pill to swallow, that this 22-year-old with his smartphone is having more success than you are. But when you open yourself to that being real, then you can identify what it is, and maybe you choose not to do that at all. Or maybe you find some little segment of his style that you can absorb, something you can learn from and improve yourself, because photography is constantly about learning from other photographers and evolving. Haven't
you experienced, like in our career, we meet people that are so resistant to change and they're always trying to fight the change, and it's just this losing fight where they dig their heels in. Do you remember Instagram? People said it wasn't for real photographers, it was crap. And now people are actually getting magazine covers because they're popular on Instagram. And it's just, you can always be fighting the change. You can always say the next generation is doing things in a way that's not cool, or influencers are stupid, or whatever the hill is you choose to die on. But the people I see succeed more are the ones that are willing to look at the change, analyze it, and embrace some part of it. I mean, that closed-mindedness is a heavy burden that will slow you down as you try to progress in life. And then you even see people that were like YouTube. We're in YouTube, obviously. Here you are watching us, but people told us it was stupid, or you know, they didn't think that what we were doing was legitimate. And so right, the people who were writing the magazines, which used to be the way that everybody communicated, they looked down on the bloggers when the blogs started to come. And then the bloggers still look down on the YouTubers now that YouTube is kind of taking over that market. But then you see them now rushing into YouTube, and it's like, now it's really hard. If you just got in at the beginning, you know, it would have been a lot easier. So being open to change, and at least being open to thinking about how that change could be good for you, I think that that's a powerful tool.
Well, let's talk about communities and
Yeah.
friendships and the drastic differences that's made in our own photography.
I didn't expect it to make such a big difference in our photography.
Can I first just thank our sponsor, Squarespace, once more?
Sure.
If you need a website, it's a great way to show off your work or your business. Head to squarespace.com/Chelsea, set it up in just a few clicks, and then try it out. If you love it, no obligation. Use the coupon code Chelsea and you'll get 10% off. Every time we've shot with somebody else, it has made a difference in my photography. I remember one of the first classes I took, it was at, I think, the University of Fine Arts in Boston.
New England University of Fine Arts or something? You don't even remember
the name of the school anymore.
You got a good one.
But what I remember is I thought I was a great photographer, even though I'd only been at it a few years. And I went out with all these other people and we did night photography. And then the next day we come back and we all look at everybody's pictures. And I didn't have the best picture, even though I thought I was so great. And I realized I was not that great. It put me in my place.
Yeah.
But it was also a learning experience for me because these other people who were in the same spot at the same time with me, they got better results than I did. They saw things that I didn't see. And again, if you can be an open-minded person, then you can absorb that. You can say, well, how is it that they saw that when I overlooked it, and try to change yourself so you can see it next time.
I think it's about more than just being open-minded. I think it's about putting your ego aside. And
ego is terrible, yeah.
And
we all have it, but you got to
we all have it, and it's a constant struggle to overcome your ego. But we have a huge photography group. It comes with our book, and it's called like the Stunners page. And you know, I've seen so many people come and go. I think there's over 100,000 people in there now, and we've been moderating it since 2012. And I've seen so many people come in that are pretty good photographers, and they're so defensive about their work. They refuse to admit if something's not in focus. They refuse to admit if the lighting's not great. They always stand their ground and say they're the best and that no one else knows better. And if you're criticizing me, you're dumb because my photos are great. And I started to notice this pattern. Those people never improved. They never improved. They were so busy defending themselves they couldn't learn. And then there'd be people that would come in and they wouldn't be good. And I'd feel bad because people would comment on their photos and be like, oh, the light's all wrong, this is crap, this is crap. And they'd take it and they'd be like, all right, I'll go back and I'll do it better next time. And I would watch them over years get better and better and better. And I even saw one of them become a published photographer because they just take the criticism and learn and improve.
I found myself, for some reason, especially with landscape photography, I just refused to do any sort of major edits.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend who was extremely successful as a landscape photographer, and we went out shooting side by side. And his published pictures looked way better than mine, and it wasn't because he picked a better time or place, it was because he did real heavy photoshopping.
Yeah.
He straight up composited a picture together based on the picture that we had taken, and he produced better results, and nobody cared that it was composite. And it helped break me out of this rut.
Yeah.
Where I had drawn this artificial boundary that it was holding myself back, and it was like, be very limiting about your post-processing. Despite the fact that I have written a Photoshop book,
yeah.
I decided that that was crossing the line.
You were being like a bit of a purist,
but it was just holding me back. And being with somebody else broke me past that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people resist editing, and I think it's because it's really hard to learn. I think that's part of the reason. It's so difficult to learn, and it's always, trends are always changing. And so you can see a great photographer with just really dated editing techniques, and it won't look right. It'll look weird. You kind of always have to be open to evolving in some way. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about also like, not just being in communities and in forums and things and shooting with friends, but also just being open to different types of photography. Like the people I follow on Instagram, they're not all the same. I like to choose photographers that do things I would never do, or that are from a world that I don't know anything about, and I learn so much from pushing myself outside of that comfort zone of what I know and what I think is good. And I found some really interesting things. Like I follow this girl gaze page, and they take pictures of women, but it's in this really natural way. So, you know, I'm entrenched in this whole really male-dominated corner of photography where everyone is like totally primped glamour female model, and this is like hairy legs, you know, braces showing, hair done normally, everything's so real. And I realized it was catching my attention all of the time because it was so different. And so I learned from that following the trend all of the time isn't always the right option. You know, sometimes completely going the opposite and going natural when everyone's going overly glam, that can really stand out. So that's just another way that I learned to improve my photos, is by kind of looking at photos that I wouldn't normally take and then learning what's so likable about it. You know what I mean?
I do.
Tony, do you know how I used my #1 tip for improving your photos to make us like $50,000?
No, please tell me so I can do it again.
You can definitely do it again. My #1 tip for you becoming a better photographer, a better business person, and I think just a better person in general, is to learn how to listen. And I don't mean hearing people, I mean actually genuinely listening, which sounds so simple, but I guarantee so many people struggle with it, because I think the difficult thing about listening, Tony, is that first of all, I think you have to be a strong person to do it, because you have to be willing to listen to someone else's ideas and suspend their beliefs as true for long enough to empathize with their point of view. And that can be really vulnerable, because a lot of people get defensive right away, right? We see this with people talking about opposing ideas all the time, whether it be politics or micro four thirds versus full frame. People shut down, they get defensive, because people are afraid if they listen, they compromise these beliefs they hold so close that make them who they are. And it can be really challenging to open up and listen to other people.
I can't say that I do that. Like, that's a value I hold. We should listen carefully.
Yeah.
But it's something that I struggle with and I try to be better at. And I first really learned this years ago reading self-help books. And it was a section about accepting criticism from other people.
Yeah.
And the instinct right away is, this person criticized me, like, screw them, they're completely wrong, how dare they say that?
Yeah.
And the self-help book just said, take a beat and ask yourself, can you find any shred of truth in what the person is saying? Any shred of truth. And when you actually look for a shred of truth in what somebody is saying, you pretty much always find it. And you can work from there to try to actually absorb some of it and not let it crush you as a person.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any harm in listening. And, you know, here's an example. I've gone to talk to other photographers before, and so much of what they're doing doesn't overlap with what we are doing. Maybe they're like a pet photographer or a food photographer, and I think they can't possibly help me. But when you open up and you listen to what someone else is doing, and you really listen and you're engaged and you ask questions, you end up learning so much. And so I've learned about how to print my art from other people. I've learned about how to sell my art. I've learned about in-person sales from other people. I don't even do in-person sales, but I'm in a whole community where I just listen to what other people are doing to make money. And I talk to other YouTubers. So I had a YouTuber that was just talking about their business, and they told me something that they did, and I listened and I did the same thing they did, and we made $50,000. I won't give too many more specifics, but listening made me aware of a project that I could do to make us better. And if I had shut that person down and said I didn't agree, or that I thought their idea was stupid, that would have never happened.
You know how you can tell that somebody's not listening when they're talking to you? If they interrupt you, right away they're not listening. Or even if they just pick up their response as soon as you finish talking.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks that fast. And that means that they were preparing their response to you while you were still talking. They weren't truly listening. If you catch yourself thinking about the next thing you're going to say,
you're not
listening.
You're
able to respond right away, you gotta that little pause after you finish talking where they actually think and like, okay, I hear what you're saying. That means somebody's listening.
Yeah, I also think if you want to know if you're listening, you should be thinking of follow-up questions. You know, you should be engaged in what the person's saying. I know there have been times when, you know, I talk to somebody that has a blog and I have a YouTube channel, and I think, what could they possibly teach me? But you start asking questions and you realize, oh, they know things that I didn't know. I've seen this go wrong for people too. Like I've watched people get really good advice from a way more experienced business person and they pass it up because I don't know why, honestly. Like an ego issue or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly ego.
We've met some of the best photographers in the world who have given me advice, and I've met complete newbie photographers and have managed to learn things from them too. So I think writing people off as like, oh, they don't know as much as me is like a mistake. You just listen. Just listen. The only thing you have to gain is that you'll learn something.
You know, some of the best photographers that we've met, they have one thing in common. They will ask us questions.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, you're on YouTube. Tell me what that's like. And then they'll have a bunch of follow-up questions. Mm-hmm. Probably because they're the type of person who asks questions and listens. I want to know stuff from them. Like, I'm like trying to get it, like, no, you are you. You're super famous.
Yeah, you
Give
tell me
information.
You're absolutely right. I've met people that are so new and they're telling me how to do stuff all the time, which I don't mind. If someone wants to give me tips, I'm like, well, I'll listen. But you're right that like the most famous, rich, experienced people are always asking us questions. Mm. So I think that that's just a trait of a person who, you know, is putting their ego aside to learn from other people. So I can't stress it enough. Even if you disagree with someone, it won't hurt you at all to just for a moment listen and think of some questions and try to learn something. I know that it's helped us so much.
So in the comments down below, I'd like to hear what you think are the things that photographers can do to improve besides just buying gear and practicing the actual science of photography. I'd also like to hear what people think of this new setup. We're a little more casual. It's in a different place. Maybe you like it, maybe you hate it. Either way, thanks to our sponsor, Squarespace. No matter what type of website you need, head to squarespace.com/Chelsea. You'll be able to set it up completely free for 14 days. Show it to your friends, see if they like it, refine it. And after that, if you love it, use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. Thanks.
Yeah, I really do think you should also just try out the free trial and see which pictures you actually like, because I was so surprised when I first made my website and realized that I was not taking some of the pictures I thought I was taking. It's a surprising exercise. So thanks. See you next time.
Bye.